Hey everyone, I am MSK, aka Master Swag King, coming at you guys today with another video. And in today's video, we are going to be talking about the Marvels, the 33rd installment in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The Marvels, just from pre-sale ticket prices alone, was already tracking to have one of the lowest opening weekends of all time for a Marvel Cinematic Universe movie. This would also rival other lowest opening weekends for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, such as The Incredible Hulk, which came out back in 2008, and the first Ant-Man movie, which came out back in 2015. Now, even before the international box office numbers were totaled to give us this number that I'm going to discuss with you in this video today, this movie also had the second worst opening day for an MCU movie. The only other movie to have the worst opening day, depending on if you kind of adjust for inflation or not, is The Incredible Hulk or the first Ant-Man movie, right? It's also really interesting that all of these, industry shills, and you have all these like media websites out there because they want to stay in the MCU's good graces, so they have their workers go on Twitter and blame everything else but the actual problem itself, right? And the biggest thing that these industry shills were bringing up was that they were bringing up that men didn't want to see women in leading roles. It was men who didn't want to go support the movie, right? Come to find out, because there's only two genders, the gender that the industry blamed for not supporting the movie was the gender that actually showed up the most to support it. Come to find out, it was mostly men that supported the Marvels, not the demographic or gender that they catered this movie to. Remember, you have three female leads. The villain is female. I mean, even the director is a female, and she's trash. Nia DaCosta's pretty trash, if I'm being honest here, right? So this isn't really geared towards dudes, right? This is mostly them going like, hey, we'll give you another female-led movie. Well, this is a female-led team-up movie. The other one would be Captain Marvel and Black Widow, right? Even Black Widow had a better opening weekend than this movie. Keep that in mind. Black Widow had a day-and-date release on Disney Plus and in theaters and still had a better opening weekend than this movie. So when you have all of these industry shills on Twitter, because they have to say this stuff because maybe the boss up there said, hey, start blaming everything else but the actual movie potentially just being a steaming pile of shit, or maybe the fact that the MCU has basically just destroyed their branding with, how bad Phase 4 is and just how bad Phase 5 has started. I mean, earlier this year, people forget with Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, it had the second weekend historic drop, which rivals Batman vs. Superman, which came out back in 2016, obviously. So the MCU, like I've been telling people, it's been bad for a while. And like I've been saying, I've only liked 2 or 3 things out of the MCU since, Phase 4 has began. Right? And there's going to be other factors that is going to contribute to this, but the ones that people are trying to perpetuate onto you, it's just not true. People are literally trying to say that it was men who didn't want to support the movie, but in reality, it was mostly dudes who showed up. And it was also confirmed that it was mostly white men that showed up to support the movie. And the reason why I bring that up is because the white men and just white people in general are always kind of just blamed for every problem now. But it's crazy because the actual race of people they probably don't even like and are just completely racist to constantly are the ones that actually showed up and supported the movie. So it went basically white people, I think Mexicans, black, and then Asian, right? So the other two minorities, Mexican and black, didn't show up as much to come support this. And women, which is the gender they wanted to cater this movie to, also didn't show up. Yeah, maybe you might want to actually be nicer to these white people you hate because they're the ones that are actually coming out and showing up in full force. Not the people you're catering these movies to. Because let's be honest here, I'm not saying that black or Asian or white I'm not saying black, Mexican, or Asian people can't like superhero movies. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is like there's been this like really just cringe racist thing going on against like white people and just this unneedless pandering to like black people that is so disgusting, and Mexican people. It's just really cringe for the most part. And Disney has not been innocent in this. They've been one of the big proponents of it, right? And when you're looking at just opening numbers like this, and before I go over all of that in this video, I will have other videos talking about this. I know Variety put out an article about why the Marvels failed opening weekend. That's one video I'm gonna give you guys. The Stephen King comments he made, I'm gonna give you guys in that video. And then there's the Screen Rant. They put out like 12 reasons why the Marvels failed opening weekend, and it's so stupid that you just have to kind of go over those videos, because Screen Rant, for the most part, is a joke, but they do get some things right sometime. And it's crazy because this goes to show you right now, people did not like that first Captain Marvel movie. I'm being honest here. I really haven't met someone who's actually liked it. Now, I get it. It's all subjective. There are going to be people out there that will like it. But the ratio to people that do like it versus people that don't like it, absolutely just astronomically big. It's like heaven to earth styles of gaps right there, right? So people, like I mentioned before, they really are not as confrontational. They'll just choose to not support it. Like, if they didn't like the first movie, then why would they watch this? Like, let's be honest here. Let's think about the general audience. Let's get into their minds. Their minds were like, I didn't like this first Captain Marvel movie. Marvel tricked me into watching this because they said it was must needed to see before Endgame, right? Why would they go watch this one? And people are going to say, but it's because of the Disney Plus shows and stuff like that. No, they weren't going to watch regardless because they didn't like the first one. That's how most people function. They didn't like the first one, so there was no indication in their mind they even wanted to support this. And then you have people that'll be like, but it wasn't marketed very well. It literally had 2 big trailers before it came out. Before the writer's strike, because people are blaming the writer's strike on this, or the new SAG-AFTRA strike. It had nothing to do with that. And even if the actresses could promote the movie, that probably adds like maybe an extra 10 million, if we're being honest here. And that's being really generous there, right? So it wasn't that. People just didn't like the first one. They really don't like Brie Larson all that much. And they just didn't care to watch the sequel. They knew it was coming out. People aren't that stupid, you know? They knew it was coming out. They just chose to not watch it. And let's be honest here. The numbers for MCU movies have been getting worse and worse. I mean, yeah, if you look at like the surface level number on some of them from phase 4 to phase 5, it's impressive. But then when you factor in marketing and other expenses there, it's really hard to tell if they actually made a profit, you know? I know people latch on to Guardians 3 as a success, but if you look at the marketing budget associated with that, I mean, it probably made money. Did it make profit? I don't know, but it's in that weird gray area, right? So it's just a wild opening weekend for the MCU, and you're not going to be ever seeing a Captain Marvel 3. That is never happening. That number alone seals that fate, right? And then, I mean, when they catered so hard to Kelly Sue DeConnick's vision of what Captain Marvel should be, I mean, why wouldn't people just go and support the movie? Am I right, guys? No, because people don't like Kelly Sue DeConnick at all. And they hated what she did with Captain Marvel, and they hate how she speaks politically because she's stupid. She's the lady, if you guys remember, that she said, if you don't like my politics, don't buy my book. That lady, that redheaded lady, right? Yeah, like, I'm able to understand. People are a little bit more in the know than you think, but as far as caring as much as we do about this stuff, then that's where the big, separation comes from, right? So, yeah, and that's really crazy because I don't know what MCU movie we're going to be getting in next year, because if this is the last movie to come out for like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, then you really got to factor in, it's like this is the last thing that's going to have a bad taste in people's mouth. And I mean, they've been having all these other issues as well. I mean, it's just absolutely crazy. So coming out in 2025, the only thing that's slated is like Blade for the most part. That's what's on the calendar right now, or and also Captain America 4, which just got announced to have, extensive reshoots due to low bad test screenings, right? So yeah, I mean, it's not looking good for the MCU. It's been bad since Endgame, because Far From Home is not a good movie at all. So let's dive into this historic MCU misfire. But like I mentioned before, guys, I have other videos talking about the Marvels, because this is something I really want to drive home, because people really were just so fixated on Captain Marvel making $1 billion at the worldwide box office back in 19, right? Well, come to find out, I mean, it looks like that is looking more like luck every single day. It was luck the first time. It just was. And if you don't agree with that, I really don't know what else to prove to you that can be luck. I mean, This number right here proves that the word of mouth on that first Captain Marvel movie is not good. Okay? Just wasn't. Now, let's dive into this article from Variety. Box office. The Marvels misfires with 47 million. Lowest MCU opening weekend of all time. And I can't wait for these guys to sit here and cope and seethe with how bad things have been, and then somehow still pretend it's everything else but the actual problem itself. Disney's Marvel Cinematic Universe is no longer a bulletproof box office franchise. That much is clear after the Marvels misfired with 47 million in its opening weekend to land the worst MCU debut in MCU history. Initial tracking was closer to 75 to 80 million, but those projections shrank dramatically in recent weeks to 60 to 65 million, with bad buzz and actors like Brie Larson unable to promote the film due to the SAG strike, which finally ended on Friday. The Marvels didn't even match those disappointing estimates. Okay, so just look at right here. Just based off estimates alone, for it to track in a low 75 to 80 million, keep in mind, people, they came in drastically lower than this. And this was already not that good, but this would be better than $47 million, right? So the movie was already planning on hitting roughly around 60 to 80 million projections, roughly, because it's always fluctuated, right? It was debated on if it was going to have a really bad, lowest ever MCU opening weekend. But even that number right there, just from the prediction numbers alone, show you that people knew it was coming out. They did. And this shows it. But people just don't give a fuck, honestly. The Marvels didn't even match those disappointing estimates. Only two other films in the sprawling series, The Marvels is the 33rd installment in 15 years, have opened to lower than 16 million. 2008's The Incredible Hulk with 55.4 million, and 2015's Ant-Man with 57.2 million, not adjusted for inflation. Although the MCU has been showing rare signs of wear and tear in expandex, the franchise's other two big screen adventures to open this year, February's Ant-Man the Wasp Quantumania, 106 million, and May's Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, 118 million, still managed to hit triple digits in their respective debuts. Okay, so Ant-Man the Wasp Quantumania built this as King's coming out party as their next big villain for the MCU, so just by that alone, people are going to be more inclined to watch because, people really like the Infinity War saga, the Infinity Stone, Infinity War saga, or however you want to define it, right? So they're going to want to check out the newest movie that has the newest villain in it, because that's going to be a big thing. And then obviously, since James Gunn really hit with Guardians, 1 and 2, that's going to be just how you get that, right? The third Ant-Man wasn't labeled a bust until the end of its box office run. The Marvels is the rare MCU movie to flop out of the gate. I mean, you could just kind of predict Ant-Man 3 was just going to be a flop. I mean, after that opening weekend numbers, it was really bad. Like, it was pathetic, honestly. But this is just not going to obviously do anything out the gate. It's because this is what people don't understand. If you start, so big budget tentpoles like this, they need to have big opening weekends so that way they could kind of build momentum to reaching past breaking even, getting to making money, and then making profit, right? And then what also includes in that is also good word of mouth, right? So if you have good word of mouth and you have nice momentum and a big number to show that, it kind of just all works in, all the same, to the point where good word of mouth, big numbers, shows that people wanted to spend their money on this product and show support for it, right? But now without that, it's never going to hit that. Starting that low as they have, this movie's not even breaking even. This is going to be a really big flop. The Marvels also fell short of expectations at the international box office with 63.3 million from 51 territories for a worldwide start of 110 million. Disney had hoped to generate at least 140 million globally over the weekend. And even that wouldn't have been great for a tentpole that cost roughly 220 million to produce and $100 million to promote the film to audiences across the globe. Now, I will also point this out too. Most people, when they're talking about this movie, are just going to focus on how big of a failure it is, box office wise. Now, just because a movie failed to the box office doesn't mean it's bad, right? It's all a subjective thing. You could watch this movie, you could like it, but that still wouldn't change it failed at the box office, and then obviously vice versa when you swap those scenarios out. The Marvels turnout, or lack thereof, is surprising because the passionate MCU fan base has turned even less embraced installments into box office winners. Audiences flat out rejected the Marvels, so it likely struggled to rebound as the holiday season heats up. And with the Hunger Games prequel, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, Disney's animated Wish, and other family-friendly films coming in weeks. Well, Disney's animated features have not done jack shit at the box office in a long time, so that's gonna be worth nothing. I know right here, Mr. David A. Gross put the excuse on the film's marketing from the strike, but now that's just BS. The Marvels, directed by Nia DaCosta and co-starring Larson, Tiana Paris, and Iman Vellani, is the sequel to 2019's billion-dollar blockbuster Captain Marvel. The follow-up film didn't come anywhere close to the heroic $153 million debut of its predecessor. However, Captain Marvel was advantageously released between two of the biggest movies of all time, 2018's Avengers Infinity War and 2019's Avengers Endgame, which made it appointment viewing for comic book fans. At that time, Marvel could do no wrong at the box office, delivering a billion-dollar behemoth with the casual snap of Thanos' fingers. It was always going to be tough, or next to impossible, to top the cultural force of Endgame. But attendance for some of the films in its wake have been startling earthbound. This comes as Disney has introduced countless new characters in spin-offs, sequels, and TV series that have graced the big and small screen. For casual viewers and Marvel devotees alike, it is a lot to keep up with. It's not even really that. It's literally like they're introducing characters no one's ever heard of, nor do they give a fuck about, and then you must keep... people are always going to blame it on like, oh, but people just want to see Endgame every time. It's literally not even true. That's not... everyone knows you're not going to get that pretty much almost ever again. Honestly, so when people use that excuse of like, it's the fans who just want to see in-game level events all the time, it's just literally not true. Some obviously might, but that's not going to be the majority of people. It just isn't, obviously. Does this mean that superhero fatigue has plagued society once and for all? Not necessarily, but the disastrous turnout for the Marvels could force a reckoning at Disney now that it's clear that audiences aren't willing to see any old superhero movie on the big screen. So I think with superhero fatigue, that argument, it comes with a lot of factors. It just does. But the biggest thing is bad writing or just bad superhero movie fatigue could also be the thing. And oversaturation is also a big player, but there's many different factors to that. And this is really gonna not bode very well for how DC has. DC's just been flopping out the gate constantly. So this is not looking good for them either. If Aquaman 2 doesn't have like a good opening number or good word of mouth opening weekend, starting from Thursday to Sunday, that film's done too. Earlier this week, the company postponed the next 4 MCU installments, Deadpool 3, Captain America Brave New World, Thunderbolts, and Blade because of strike-related production delays, which gives the studio time to tinker with its strategy before Earth's Mightiest Heroes return to the multiplex. God. Marvel has historically seen most of its films benefit from goodwill. The opposite of that momentum is currently playing out right now. Yeah, because they're just doing really stupid decisions. They're making terrible decisions, and that's the reason why it's happening. It's a crucial time now for Disney to allow Kevin Feige and the Marvel Brain Trust as much creative control as possible to course correct. The Marvels was this weekend's only new nationwide release, so several holdovers rounded out box office charts. That's even worse. This is the only newest movie that has come out, and it's just failed like that. There's literally no competition outside of like Taylor Swift's movie or Five Nights at Freddy's, actually, And Five Nights at Freddy's has pretty much just destroyed the Marvels, and it will destroy the Marvels, not even just from opening weekend numbers, right? Because that right there shows you, if you give fans a good idea of what their property's going to look like, and if it's an indication of its trailers that it's going to be good, they're going to actually show up. So, yeah, people can blame like the strike and all these other non-factors. None of that matters. This is what the real thing is here. Disney and Marvel have been making terrible decisions, starting with Phase 4, starting with TV, and then how the Phase 4 movies have laid out themselves. Some of these movies are egregiously bad. Thor: Love and Thunder, it's just so bad. Eternals is just so bad. You know, you have other movies in there as well that people didn't like. The TV shows have pretty much all been a miss for a lot of people. They kind of only just like one out of many of them that have been released. People didn't like Brie Larson, Captain Marvel. They said she was insufferable, and they chose to do a sequel to Captain Marvel. And the only reason why they did it was because of the box office number. They didn't do it for any other reason other than that. Because if they actually heard what fans said, they didn't care for Brie Larson's Captain Marvel. They didn't really like her to begin with. And that's where we're seeing this play out. You know, and it's really telling how people are just going to blame men on the movie not succeeding, which is really stupid because men are the reason why the movie even got its lowest opening, right? So without enough men supporting this would have probably been even worse. Imagine a world where most dudes were like, I'm not checking this out at all. Like, it would have been a bigger disaster because the demographic they're trying to cater to, that they've been trying to cater to, which is utterly failed them, but they still keep doing it. They just don't learn. They just don't listen. They just don't learn. And the women that like this stuff are like, you could just kept it the way it was. You didn't need all this needless pandering to a bunch of people. Like, I'm just being honest here. And looking at how the MCU's panned out with their lowest opening weekend of all time, not only is there not going to be Captain Marvel 3, I mean, that's probably a good thing, right? And you must also consider the fact that they're going to be changing up a lot of their releases. Their movie styles should change. Obviously, it's not working. Whatever propaganda they're trying to push on people with some of these fucking new movies that they've been putting out, you know, all this bullshit, you know. There's the TV department just got basically upended. It's not been looking good for the MCU, having this historic low for the franchise. And yeah, this proves that the fans, they're not just going to support everything now because you've basically been burning them with stupid released movies that have no way of where they're headed. Actually, no one's going to know. Post-credit scenes tie into this nothing. New characters getting released on Disney Plus shows people just don't really give a fuck about. Oh, the MCU going through this. I mean, kind of always thought that was going to happen, but not in this fashion. This is just disastrous now. What do you guys think about the Marvels having a historically low and the lowest MCU opening weekend of all time? 47 million. That means this had a worse opening weekend than The Flash. That is been confirmed. The Flash is a bad movie too, and I imagine this is not much better, if not much worse. They're probably the same level, obviously. But yeah, this is not gonna be, this is just a bomb. This is a bomb. This is not making any money back. There's no way. There's just no way. And anybody blaming any outside factors other than the actual issue is just a dumb industry shill, and you should not be listening to them. Thank you guys for watching this video so much. Like of the video, comment down below, subscribe if you haven't, hit the notification bell. I am MSK, Master Swag King, and I'm signing out, guys. See you guys later. Deuces. Peace.